Okay. Good afternoon. The Colfax City Council meeting of May 29th, 2024 is now in session. We do a pledge. Would you like to give the Pledge of Allegiance? Pay attention.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Shanna, would you give the roll call?
Councilmember Hilberg.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Loman.
Here.
Councilmember McCauley. Here. Mayor Douglas.
Present. Public comment. Now is the time for public comment. Is there any public to comment?
I will choose the.
You can step up to the desk or use a handle, but you'll need to click the button and turn it on.
We're here to talk about the budget. And I want to go over a few things from last week's meeting. Specifically about like the 3rd of July, how there were some members not wanting to donate to that. But then on the same hand, talking about how do we get people downtown? That's the only way people come downtown is on that day. The city doesn't do anything else to get them downtown. Forcing businesses to open doesn't bring more people downtown. As far as the movie theater, the bike shop opened up. He opened, didn't bring people downtown. And then we want to, instead of donating to the 3rd of July, we want to donate to the garden club, which I have nothing against the garden club, but they don't generate any tax income for the city of Colfax. And if they do, it's definitely not as much as the 3rd of July. And then also the big elephant in the room, where's the money come from Amazon? That's what's killing every business downtown or in all around the country is Amazon. No one's walking the streets because they look at their phone. So where's somebody going after that? Every package in a UPS truck that's from Amazon, why doesn't the city get $1 from that? And the other thing is, you know, the inflation rate. So everybody's paying more, statewide, worldwide, but yet everybody's still broke. We still have to go to the small guy, the taxpayer, to get money. We still have to go to you who's paying more for inflation. And, you know, I've been told that, City of Colfax's books are open, but the state's books aren't open. How come we're 80 million or billion, I'm sorry, in the hole, and small towns are having to scratch for every penny and then have to put that back on the citizen? We're sorry, we have to raise your rate. Oh, but don't worry, look at our state government. They're 80 billion in the hole that's unaccountable. We won't go after that. So I say before you even claim to be sticking up for the citizens of Colfax, where's the letter to Newsom asking where he wasted 80 billion? Where's the inflation rate? That's extra tax dollars. How much extra tax dollars are we getting? I'd like to see the ratio because I know it's not the same for the increase in inflation, the extra tax dollars versus what cities are getting. So I just don't see where you can go to the citizens and demand more money when we're the end user. Where's the big government that we pay all these taxes to coming in? I guess that's it.
Thanks.
But, okay, so if it's just that simple, so will anybody propose an open letter? I mean, are we gonna go after the big guy, or is it, well, our government's 80 billion in the hole, but sorry, we're coming to you for more money? Is that how it works? I mean, is that, and now I know, you can't say anything because it's not on the docket to talk about, but isn't that kind of against the citizens? Here I am asking a question and nobody says, well, yeah, I'll do this. Why can you not talk to me now? And one more point. Every problem we see in the world, every problem is a man-made problem. And it's because no one's doing what's right. Everybody's trying to pass the buck. And another thing is, no offense against anybody that works for the city. I've lived here my whole life. Been here since 81. I remember when the DMV was right there and it was ran by one lady. Now, how many employees does the city have? How much debt does the city incur when everything's continually growing, tax wise, but cities continue to be broke? Where's the money go? Why could one lady run it 20 years ago and now it takes a team of 25? I don't know how many work for the city, not that many, but you know what I'm getting at. It's the cost keeps going up for the end user while our tax dollars just disappear into thin air. And then they say, well, we don't have it. And the other thing is, a lot of people don't understand this. They always say two things. We have to cut two things, or you have to vote in a tax raise. What are the two things they're going to cut? Fire stations and schools. They're coming after your kids' education and your safety. It's a veiled threat. We're going to have to raise your taxes. We're going to have to steal more money from you. Or we have two things to cut: your safety, that fire station down the road, or your schools, your kids' education. We got the flyer in the mail, vote for a bond to fix up Colfax School. So is that how it works? We just skim? All that tax dollars go poof into thin air, no money for the schools, and then, they're in disrepair. Now file for a bond to get that. File for a grant to get that tax money that they took from you in the first place. Just like after the river fire. There's always money in grants to help people after the fact. But that money just wasn't even there before the fact to do any mitigation. But then after the fact, they dole out just a little bit and say, hey, here, we got these grants for you. Well, where'd the money go in the first place? You just took it from us in the first place. And then you dole it out a little bit at a time through grants. So when I hear someone address those issues and say, I'm going to go after the guy that's 80 billion in the hole, that put our state 80 billion in the hole, I'm going to write a letter to him and stand up as the city of Colfax and say, no, we're not, the buck doesn't stop here. We're not passing it on to the citizens. Let's go to where it came from, the government. Go to him. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other comment from the public? Okay. Well, yeah, we're not allowed to comment or get involved in dialogue, although most of us are here because we want to try to pull the reins in on government. I mean, I'm personally here to try to pull the reins in on government.
And I know everybody, you guys are doing the job, you do what you can for the city, but it's ultimately, we're just the middleman, and to actually solve the problem, you gotta go to the top.
Yeah.
Us squabbling is what they're looking for. They want us yelling at each other. You guys taxing the citizens, they don't want you going after them and saying, no, here, hey, look, you made news, the city of Colfax sent a letter saying we're demanding our tax dollars for inflation rate, and it ain't happening. I don't need to see the numbers to guarantee it ain't happening.
I second your motion. Now we move on to appreciate it. Item 2A, annual review. Who would like to begin the annual review?
Okay.
being my first time in the city here. First thing before we start the annual review, we just want to thank Shauna for all her hard work. I know it took her a long time to put it together. Thank Lori for backing up Shanna on this. We've all looked it over. It's a pretty normal budget for the city. Areas of concern I've heard from council members and public is event funding. Oh, I thought I was supposed to introduce it, just. Okay,
It's just our annual review, policies and procedures for, finance and investment policies. That's what, we don't have any recommended changes this year. It is our policy to support the board and council. And, you know, that's.
That was going to be my question, which is that, is there anything new there? And you basically said no, okay. Because they're pretty solid, I think, well written and easily understood. Any comments? Move on to item 2D, risk assessment.
This came out of an audit a few years back where the auditors recommended that we put together a risk assessment committee that
That way they get to hear you too, so I know. Thank you.
This came out of audit a few years back where the audit firm recommended that we set up a committee. Different kinds of financial areas of concern for fraud. I didn't attend the meeting this year, so I'm going to let Ron jump in, but there's a list of things that we go through. We try to look at things that we hear about in the news that are happening in other jurisdictions or different accounting controls that might be a concern and talk through. Honestly, we don't really ever come up with anything to address. Because I think that we can see the types of things that we talk through. And
you have anything to add, Shauna?
Just that staff didn't identify any new indicators. It's been a pretty clean year. We haven't had any attempts at fraud like we had in the past, so we're good to go.
At what point in the year do we audit? In July, do we start? We have to go to an outside auditor every year, right?
our fiscal year end 30th. We're on a modified accrual basis, allows for 90 days after the year end. We'll determine how things are booked as deferred or not deferred. That means our audit doesn't hurt.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we move on to item 2C. Tax the public, all that they'll take. No, that's not, who wrote that in there?
2C, review of fiscal year 24, 25, 25, 26 preliminary budget. I tend to like to jump ahead, obviously. Pretty much status quo budget, nothing out of the ordinary in there. Areas of concern again were event funding, nonprofit funding, the downtown dining area, the city manager's salary from percentage of sewer, and I'll add at the end the city manager training that was required by our agreement.
Any comment on how we want the city manager to be trained?
Thoroughly, but he's already pretty much there. He's doing great, so.
I kind of see that Ron knows where he has his holes and what he wants to do in, so I'm pretty comfortable with what he's picking and choosing at this point to take advantage of.
I'll bring you up to speed. The League of Cities has a city managers conference once a year. They flip flop every year from Southern California and Northern California. I don't see any reason to spend the money for me to go to Southern California for a week, so I'll wait for the one to come back to Sacramento. Same with their conference, annual conference and expo. They usually have a city leaders summit in April, and was in Sacramento this year. So if it's in Southern California next year, I won't go, but if they keep it here, I'll go. Other training, Placer Business Alliance has an annual conference. And this weekend, I'm attending the Home Hardening Defensible Space Qualified Entries Training, so I can evaluate the properties for that program for the OES grant that we just have to figure out who needs what in the home hardening, what they qualify for.
Any comments? Then there's always the School of Hard Knocks.
He's doing well on that one.
So far, yeah.
So did we want to start with the discussion of event funding?
Sure.
Sounds good. Which page is that on?
These are just notes I took from feedback from Paul and the council over the last few months.
Okay.
So it's kind of multiple council meetings. There's been concern, which events do we fund? How much do we want to spend overall for event funding? And then how do we want to break that up? A lot of discussion on fireworks. And then we'll move to nonprofit funding after that.
So I know we've had previous conversations about separating the fireworks from this particular item. But the thought that I was having was, we know that we also want to encourage not only the events happening, but our nonprofits to be doing their fundraising to make their events happen as well. And we don't want this fund to be eaten up by 2 or 3 events during the year, because it is designed for all of our nonprofits to be able to take advantage of using it if they have something coming up that they need support for. So the thought that I was having was to consider increasing the fund a little bit. We're not talking huge jumps, but increasing it, but saying that we have 3 main events a year. Of course, 3rd of July being the largest one. But instead of saying, okay, we're going to donate, we're going to pay for the fireworks, we're going to do this for the fireworks, the 3 main events can get this much money out of it, kind of pretty much making it a flat amount that they're going to get. How they choose to use it is on them. If it's part of their fireworks, so be it, whatever. And I can understand saying the 3rd of July gets more of it. So it's not an equal division between the 3rd and Winterfest and Railroad Days based on attendance, basically. But then they have their flat amount. They know what they have potential to get. Not that it's promised or anything, but then be able to have the rest of that money for all of our other smaller nonprofits that we can support, if that makes sense. So I think right now it's set at 20,000 is what the cap was in there.
It was 20 for the last couple of years, and I built in a little bit of an escalator, and I put 23 for this next year and 25 for the year thereafter.
Okay, so my suggestion would be that we consider increasing it to somewhere around 25 to 30. Don't hit me. It's okay. No, it's a conversation. I know. It's always hard. And then to maybe say, I didn't have solid numbers in my head, but say we split it 60-40. 40 goes to our smaller nonprofits. 60% of that would go to the 3 main events, if that makes sense. And then out of that, say something that's like, I don't know, a little bit more than a third, of course, would go to 3rd of July because they're the larger event out of it. Railroad Days is the smallest, even though it's a 2-day event. But either way, stagger that between the 3 events and split it up. But then know that 60% of it is all that those 3 events are going to get. And so they know ahead of time how much fundraising they need to do. They know what their max cap would be coming from the city. And that way they can take a little bit more. I don't want to use the phrase personal responsibility, but be a little bit more proactive because they kind of know what they're going to get potentially. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. That makes sense, but I think it's kind of hard to know exactly where the costs are going to be for some of these. So
And that's part of planning events, as you go get your quotes up way ahead of time and know how much you have to raise and how much you have to fundraise. So if they know that their event's gonna cost them 20,000 and okay, you're gonna get 7,000 from the city. Okay, well, now they know exactly what their fundraising targets are. It's not some random number that until they get to this, council meeting, which is usually only a couple months before their event, they know ahead of time. The max the city will give us is this. We know what we need to make up for the difference.
I'm not opposed to setting a cap to it and leaving it like that, because we can always make a budget adjustment later if we need to.
If we have to, I just really want to remove the city's paying for the fireworks concept. We're paying for the event, and these events, just like you said, that's what brings people into downtown. While we try all these other ideas to get traffic in on a regular basis, these 3 events are what introduce people to our downtown. So we do want to fund these events. They do have a long-term impact. It's not just, okay, here's your 3-minute fireworks show and this money's up in smoke. These people have now been introduced to Colfax. They've come down here, they see it, they see all of our stores and things we have to have, and they will come back. So it's not just oh, look, they paid for the fireworks. No, we're supporting this event that brings all these people into town and brings our community together. So.
We usually just say the fireworks because it's the most expensive part of these events, the most expensive single portion of the event.
Yeah.
It's a little bit cheaper for Winterfest to pay for the fireworks because off season is always more expensive for 3rd of July. So it makes sense to split the money like that. And
Yeah.
I think we'll be pretty well covered. We don't get a whole lot of requests from other nonprofits, but I think if the word gets out, then
Exactly. And that's what I want to
More
change
support.
is to be able to say there is this big chunk of change over here for all of our nonprofits. It's not going to be eaten up by these events. I want to, in essence, separate them so that all of our nonprofits know that there is a chunk here that they can use to, it's not just going to primarily go to those 3 events. So that is definitely the desire of putting a cap or separating, however you want to phrase it.
So looking into the past, we had a budget item that was dedicated to nonprofits, and none of them got any, right? And all the money went to events. I do like part of what you said, which is that we set the amount so that allows them to budget. In the past, what's happened because of our history is that they didn't raise any money themselves. And the city ended up coming in at the last minute like the cavalry and saving the events, so to speak. And that's probably not a good way to do it. I like what Carolyn said about setting the amounts ahead of time, and they know how much they have to raise. And that puts the burden upon them and not upon us. And regarding nonprofits, we could subdivide one account, or we could have 2 separate accounts. It really doesn't make any difference as long as we know the amounts involved. If we decide the amount is 30 and we decide that 18 of that goes to nonprofits and 12 goes to events or vice versa or whatever, it doesn't really matter whether they're 1 account or 2. But I don't like the idea of them having to compete for the money just because of the history. You know, there are a lot of good nonprofits in this town that do they're good for the town in many ways. I mean, the one example is from last week. The Garden Club was, as she said, the #1 garden club for benefiting their community in the country, I think is what she said. That brings people here. You know, it's just an attractive area because of it. So whether it's one fund and we set arbitrary percentages between the 2 or have 2 separate funds, I don't care. But I like the idea of budgeting. So the event knows how much they can expect. And they know that whatever they want to do, they have to raise the rest themselves like they did going back 5 and 10 years where they raised all their money and there was no city money. So it's just a case of setting their expectations and being reasonable about it. And whether they want to spend it on fireworks or whatever, that's up to them. You know?
So I just played with numbers real quick because I had done this previously and I don't have them. I don't know where it went, but either way, so if it was 30,000 that we had for a max budget and we split it 60-40, that puts 18,000 for your three main events, 12,000 for the rest of the nonprofits to be able to use. And then I split it between 9,000, 7,000, 4,000 for the three main events. Does that make sense? So, and that's just an example. It doesn't mean it has to stay there, but to me, that seems like a pretty fair split. Thinking of how many people they come into town and what the expense of that event is for them to be able to put on. And then, I mean, 12,000 for the other groups that we have, that's a pretty significant amount of change that any one of those other nonprofits could utilize. Yeah, and if something came up and there became a fourth event that came about, like, we're talking about with the big boy coming in and stuff, obviously that can fall in there. And if for some reason we have another annual event, fine, we'll readjust down the line, whatever it is, but there's my proposal for you.
Yeah, those amounts sound pretty good because that's just under what they've been asking for.
Right.
So it gives us the ability to give them a little push, but also move stuff around if we need to.
Yeah.
So,
And definitely we want to encourage that individual fundraising. So that we don't want them to rely on the city for it.
right.
So.
Okay,
Looking for a little direction for staff here. I'm hearing that you want to increase event support or economic support. Okay, so we'll take a number of 30,000. You would like us to close on that? I'm not agreeing that you're asking us to come up with the guidelines, how you're going to direct the money.
Yeah, I mean, that's my first proposal is that we increase that account up to 30,000 is what I'm gonna throw out and we can discuss from there, so. But and then I just said how we would split it and that we could decide later down the line.
in general, I like the approach of the 60-40 breakdown because it allows other nonprofits to get involved. In the past, they either been too reticent or passive or whatever to come in and ask for money. The only people that ask for money have been the extroverts, and they get the biggest piece of the pie. So I like that overall approach, the 60-40, because of that 40%, it could cover big boy. I'd like to see scholarships for the high school and elementary school. Small amounts, but something to help get them involved in the city. We've never really had a good relation with the school and us. And this might be a way to get them in. Instruments, they want to start a band. Well, we could perhaps allocate some money for instruments, another way to get the schools involved. I think it's ideally, being a libertarian, I would like to see matching funds to force the nonprofits to raise some of their own money. That might be too cumbersome to try to work out, but maybe that can be fine-tuned later to have some kind of matching funds or 3-to-1 ratio, but that might be too ambitious for this first year to try that. It'd be nice to some cities are going away, reducing their fireworks, and they're having more like a carousel, for example. Austin, Texas doesn't have fireworks anymore. Livermore, California doesn't have them. They have drones. I've been trying to get drones in the mix for a long time, and one of these decades it may happen. But I just think it's something to put in the back of our minds that we have to start thinking of other ways. Now, back in Pennsylvania, where I'm raised, the fireworks are light, but there's a lot of games, goofy games that families can participate in. I would like to see a little more of that. That's something we can't do overnight, but I just want to open up our thinking to that.
So you're gonna spearhead some of these events then?
Well, yeah, I would have to. If I
Okay.
put my foot in my mouth,
I mean,
I know how to change feet.
that's right. I mean, if there's a market for it, I'm sure any one of these groups would be happy to open up to it, but it's not something we get to dictate what they're doing with it on that spectrum.
Yeah.
And I think it makes sense to have a public topic.
I just just thinking of pure numbers, first off, this is taxpayer dollars we're talking about. We don't have this unlimited supply of money to pass out. And what we passed out last year was $20,000. Actually, it ended up going over that because we drew some general funds money for July 3rd. We allocated 10,000 and we only had 6 left, right? And fair enough, that's a done act and it's behind us. But going from 20 to 30, the events basically got 20 in the last year already. So it's not really a change for them. And what's new is the $12,000 that would go to nonprofits.
So it
And what
sounds
I
like,
visualize is something like a grant process, not a formal grant process, but a process where the city proactively says, we have these funds available to nonprofits. Please come forward with your needs and we'll consider them.
so it sounds like what you're suggesting might be better off as a separate line item, showing just that 12,000 just for nonprofits and breaking out the 18,000 for event support. That way you can track through that program who's actually been awarded.
I like tracking. I mean, that's the way you do things, right? You budget and you track. And then the next year you re-budget and then you track again, and budgets change over time depending upon the needs of the community and the money that we have. So separate, sure. I mean, if we know the amounts, make them separate. And if we know that a certain amount is going to events, let's just call it an events fund. It doesn't really matter. It's a little cleaner probably in the way Shannon just said, and we know exactly what went where.
And do you all agree on the 18-12 split?
So I mean, the first question is, would think is, do we all agree with the 30 is what we would like to see if we can make happen? Do we want to change that number? Are you happy with 30,000 for the overall budget for this subject? And then once we know that number, we can split.
I think for what our budget is now, what we're showing for our future growth, I think we'll be okay increasing it like that. So I'm good with it.
Yeah, I'm good with 30. Again, I'm the libertarian, but I'm not good with it, but I'll go along with it.
Okay, so then it would be talking about a 60-40 split. Do you guys think that's a good split between the two of them? And then if you guys determine it's best to set it into 2 separate account methods, then that makes sense to do too. But do we like the 60-40? Do we think it should be different?
I think like
It's a good split. I'm
saying
saying
we want to keep it as a 60-40 split is fine, but I think keeping it in the same fund, we're basically granting the money because they're coming in and asking the council to award the funds. So we're still getting public record of it that way. And it'll be recorded. I mean, they know where every penny goes. So we'll definitely have it on record.
Yeah, my answer on a separate account is gonna, to my opinion, it's up to you guys. What's easier for in your guys' world? If you think it's easier to split it, then split it,
Yeah.
because I'm not the finance person.
Yeah, I'm not tracking it. I'm just
So-
looking at the numbers afterwards.
So I leave that to defer to you guys as to the best way to handle that.
For what it's worth,
I think we'll just keep it in one.
All right. So yeah, so the direction for staff would be, we would like to see this reworked with a $30,000 cap on that particular line item. Yeah, this is workshop. You get to chit chat and add in as much as you want, whether you go up there or grab the other microphone, please.
Don't let us get you out.
Yeah,
Just
we
want to
want to
say-
hear your opinions.
You're representing 2,000 people.
That's right. It's all about you. So yeah, just make sure to hit that button. Thank you.
I went to the conference, I don't know what you want to call it, after the river fire. I live right at the top of Plum Tree. My home was half hour away from being burnt down. Fire went the other way, luckily, unfortunately for others. We went to the meeting. It was thought to be caused by a bum at the time. I don't know whatever happened with that, but we were told by the sheriff, and I specifically stood up and asked him this. He said, if you citizens want to help with the bum bum problem, you need to donate to nonprofit charities. And I stood up and I'm gonna say the same thing I said then that I said to the sheriff that said, if you want to help with the bum population, you need to donate to nonprofits. I thought my tax dollars were the nonprofit I was donating to. It's like saying, well, I'm sorry, Colfax has a bum problem. We don't. I'm just saying, in general, let's say, I'm sorry, the town has a bum problem. The citizens haven't donated enough to stop that. I'm sorry, the 3rd of July was a bum year and we didn't have any fireworks. The citizens didn't donate enough to that. And yes, I agree with you. The nonprofits need to do more to donate. My wife is on the PTA and also on the Green Machine. She just joined the Green Machine after Andrea quit. And yes, they do need to do a lot to get donations. But also on the same hand, the city's having meetings saying our town's going out of business in general because no one comes here. And then on the same hand say, well, we don't want to, put a bunch towards our biggest thing we have, our biggest tax day of the year. We don't want to put that much to it, the garden club. And nothing against the garden club. I love gardening. I have a big, huge garden. But what does it bring? What tax income does it bring as far as making everybody donate to have their biggest festival of the year? I don't get it. I don't know why the city doing that, but just doesn't promote it as much as they could, especially when they're saying we need to get more business down here the other 364 days. So I just don't know why yes, nonprofits do need to do more to raise money for themselves, but I don't know why the city fights it. And it sounds just like it did when the fire came through. There's always money after the fire to donate not donate. There's always money after the fire that the government gives the people, grants and all that. But where'd the money go in the first place for mitigation? So that's all I have to say.
Okay, any other comments on the comments? Oh, well, anything, I guess, we don't have to.
Have another topic we're moving on to?
Yeah, some of the other polling topics from the council over time was the downtown dining area. What we want to do with that.
Well, on that subject, I want to say, let's wait till September to discuss it, because there's been a grant put in request to help redo that. So we'll know in September. I'm gonna knock on wood that it comes through. So
Okay.
let's not make any decisions on that one yet. Can I ask that?
Yeah, we put in for some.
Well, but I mean, then the question would be, whoever brought that one up, how much money and where do we want it to come from? Because that's what we're talking
That
about.
would be the question. Yeah.
Yeah, so
If you want to wait till September, that's fine.
I don't know. Larry's thinking.
I think that would come about because of a move of the caboose, right? I mean, that is.
That grant that was applied for is completely different than the caboose. It's two separate things.
Oh, no, I understand it,
Okay.
but it's the land that's left behind when the caboose moves, right? After it moves or no?
I think this is talking about what we have right now out there for seating, not enhancing Roytown Plaza.
Exactly.
So two separate areas.
It's the split rail kind of area that you had for COVID. Out in front of.
So right in front of
places to eat, get coffee and things like that.
the pizza parlor and everything. So that's what we were discussing is that.
I didn't realize that. I would support that. I think that would be anything that brings people downtown will benefit Colfax. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we could look at doing a short-term fix on it, putting some money to that right now, because I know we need to do the fencing, right? That was the.
Entirely up to council what you want that.
Yes. So the immediate fix that it needs is fencing needs to be redone. So we could discuss setting some money aside for that. I know Ron's come up with a couple different ideas, and I think a rough estimate on money that would need.
That's $2,500.
Can we just do that out of the maintenance budget and have it be city maintenance?
If that's what council desires.
I don't like that. It doesn't work.
Or can we do that? Can we just, yeah, just use city maintenance budget and $2,500 is well within your approval authority. So actually, I 100% support.
Yeah, absolutely. I see what you want in support of.
Yeah, for sure.
And I definitely want it to be something quality, but like you said, I don't know, how do I want it done right, but don't get carried away, because in a perfect universe, we get a whole lot more money. Balance that somehow for me.
I'm just gonna suggest that we put some money on the capital budget for that type of project. We don't have to decide on the project when it's into the budget. We still bring projects back to council. Implemented dollars are. So I would suggest that we just put a line item on the capital budget, $25,000. About it. Doesn't mean we're gonna spend it. It means that you've got a project in mind that we'd like to consider. It's something to plan, got it in our cash forecast, a probable project, but I don't think we need to tie it in.
Is there a line item for that now? Oh, I'm fine with that, $25,000, like you said. Ideas are presented to us one at a time, and we either say yes or no, and we don't have to spend the money.
Well, and that just takes that connectivity study that we did, and we can start it in baby steps to make those things happen. So I think that's a great idea.
What was the grant amount possibly?
What's asked for is 20,000. They give out between they give out between 10 and 30,000 per project, and what was asked for was 20,000, and it was specifically written for that outdoor seating area.
Cool. Can we do the 2,500 now just as a discretionary expenditure for you, and then set a $20,000 line item? So if we don't get the grant, we can study the improvements, the major improvements, and just do a nice cleanup now.
Well, I just wanted to assure the council was on board before I cleaned it all up.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of a non-official outside dining area.
Right. Absolutely.
So yeah, Lori, I think run with your suggestion, make a separate line item for it. That would be fantastic. And then, yes, we all agree, please, let's get that fixed, the fencing fixed.
So for me, the best path forward to getting outside people to come downtown is to get ourselves to come downtown. And I think that would help. So I'm all for it. And I realize budget, that means starting 5 weeks or so from now, whatever that is. But we could spend that money right now if we wanted, right? Given a presentation, and I would be for it.
Okay, moving forward. The last item that I've heard a lot about from all council members and the public, especially during the sewer rate study, was the amount of city manager salary that comes out of the sewer. At present, it's 45%. So if you're fine with that, we can leave it. If you want to adjust it, let us know.
So my suggestion had been that we move a small percentage, we're not getting carried away, maybe 10 or 15% of Ron's salary into the regular fund out of the sewer side of it. So we're doing a little bit that we can to control the rising cost over there.
You do have 45% right now coming out of the general fund for Ron.
Right.
And that's the thing that I was interested in is that is in the interest of transparency. And by that, I mean to the public. This is not something that the public is aware of. And what I would like to see is the staff to determine, you know, what are real percentages, you know, what are supportable and what could we be transparent about, and just reallocate that money out of the sewer fund and into general funds. But it would be up to you guys to present to us, you, the staff, what are reasonable numbers? You know, are they just thrown together now, or are they reasonable? Can you support them, et cetera?
We've discussed this over the 13 years I've always felt that it's been a fair allocation. Talk about what is required to run a business. Sewer enterprise fund is a separate business. And so I think it's a fair allocation, but if you want to do put in funding for that. This has always been staff's best recommendation the allocations. It's been vetted through our rate studies to be fair and equitable. I think to make any changes, you need to say, does he spend that much less? Is it, that was the feeling, that's for the time spent.
I can tell you that that percentage is pretty much standard for all the other agencies I work for. But it came up and it came up a lot, so that's why we're discussing it.
I think you have an even higher justification for spending out of the wastewater fund to your salary than previous city managers have. So you're gonna have a lot more in-depth administration and working, and you're also on standby for it. So, and I think it's a pretty fair allocation, honestly.
I think the budget workshop probably isn't a place to really discuss that a lot, but if the staff feels what Laura just said, all the numbers are fair, then that's what comes back to us. But that's what I would like to see, that you as a staff determine, yeah, those are all good numbers. And
I just think if you make a change, there needs to be substantiation behind it. Because if you want to make a change back later, you're going to. We looked at it before, we felt.
What else did we have?
That was pretty much the list of feedback and questions I've gotten from the council in the time I've been here about budget.
So I guess I'd like to step back and maybe just go through the management budget memo, because this, the workshop is to discuss all the kind of estimates put into the budget, then back to council. For approval of the budget. So just that we, if you go back and look at the staffing, we have not made any changes in our staffing budget. Right now, we're about a half a person. We are a half person higher than what we're proposing, and that's because we had some crossover hired and been doing cross training. We put in the 3% for the COLA increase that's in accordance with our MOU with the union. And then also the provision for 2.5 to 5% merit increases at employee anniversary dates. These are consistent with practices of the past. No increases in our estimates are being forecast here. As you know, we still have a lot of administrative functions that are covered by contract services, being our attorney, some finance consulting services, city planner, building inspector, and engineering services. So those are carried in professional services in the budget. In our general fund, our highest revenue sales tax, we have projected a conservative 1% increase for the budget years. And that number of sales tax accounts for property taxes are the second largest revenue source, and we've estimated a 5%.
right, what is the percentage of property tax then?
I'm sorry, I don't have that number off the top of my head. I guess it's probably. I don't know. I can't answer that off the top of my head, sorry.
I'm just seeing that there are there's property tax, sales tax, and TOT taxes. I don't know what TOT taxes are, but.
Transient occupancy.
Okay. Yeah, I don't need it right now, but at some point I'd like to see the breakout of that. I do realize that sales
bring that
tax
forward.
is the big one. Oh, and just in that context, something that the one person we have here that's representing 2,000 citizens, he mentioned Amazon. And no, I'm glad he brought that up, because Amazon collects a lot of sales taxes from those of us who order things from Amazon. And I'm wondering, do those taxes find their way back here?
They do. It goes by the property address. And if they can identify the property address, then the city gets the normal share that we'd get if it occurred here.
And is it significant? I hope it is. Because the world turned upside down between Amazon and local retail.
I haven't looked at it recently, but I know definitely during the pandemic, when sales tax went down kind of the jurisdictions. But the county pool, which is, those numbers show up because it doesn't get assigned to a business in our town, those numbers up.
That, like it or not, that's the future.
Tested the system on the state website, sales tax website, putting it. It did account for it coming.
I was just gonna say, it kind of chimes in with the, what is it? It was like $1,500 a month for someone to rent their house out.
Oh, you're talking about the,
Like a bed and breakfast or, yeah, not a month to month.
It was $1,500 for the first time they applied to do it. It's not a month, it's a.
Oh, okay, okay,
just
okay.
need to get them legit in the city. And then there was a yearly.
But that, well, it's a city ordinance, is that correct? So why can, like I said, why can the city not have an ordinance? In this town, we charge an extra $1 to Amazon for every package. Hey, everybody'd come downtown, wouldn't they? I mean, wouldn't they? The bike shop would stay open. Nobody'd buy their tires online.
I'd have to say that there's very little that I buy on Amazon that I can actually get in town.
Well, you're rare.
There's
So,
not much.
I mean, just if we're creating ordinances, if every problem there is man-made, let's create some more and say, hey, if you want to shop, if you live in the city of Colfax and you want to buy something on Amazon.
Saying we don't have Mick here, but I'm gonna guess it's illegal to tax one entity, one business, like a type of business, yes, but I don't think I can increase the tax on just one
Yeah,
business itself. I'm pretty sure that would be illegal,
right.
unfortunately.
So how does that play into if it's a type of business versus I say I own a home and I want it rented out, like a B&B, I'm a single type business. I'm not a.
Well, see, then we would have to literally tax everybody that does retail sales. So we are literally going to tax everybody who does an Airbnb. I mean, that transient tax goes to everybody that falls under that category. If we're gonna tax Amazon, you have to tax everybody that sells anything retail, because that's what Amazon is. So that would just be increasing a tax to every single one of our retail
Or anybody
establishments.
through the mail.
All of our storefronts that sell stuff, all the consignment shops, everything do a lot of online business. And that's really the only reason they have a storefront. So we would end up hitting them just as hard.
Make it incoming, not outgoing.
There
And that's all possible. See, everything, it's all possible. You can make those little rules and say, well, no, we're not gonna tax our own businesses when they mail something out. It's when everybody gets something coming in that they don't go downtown for.
Well, the state and the feds make up stuff all the time. So why?
Exactly. They make it up as.
Doesn't matter what the rules actually say.
I like the outside of the box thinking, though. Is there anything else we still need to cover?
We can cover whatever you would like.
I just had a question about the sheriff.
Yes.
And I know, and somewhere in the text it said that each year we expect it to go up 5%. But going up from this current fiscal year to next fiscal year, it's about 3 times that. And I'm wondering why. Is that a new contract or? So the difference from 23-24 to 24-25 is, it's like, I don't know, somewhere over 15%, I think.
One thing you have to understand is that the sheriff costs kind of show up in 2 places on the budget. They show up in the department, and they also show up in Fund 218. Each year, the city gets $100,000 for law enforcement, or not for law enforcement. I can't remember. Grant's called. It's called cops, but it's not specifically for safety. We put those funds to the sheriff contract. But for the last couple of years, we've gotten extra funding. When they have extra left over, it gets allocated out to the city. So that increase that you're seeing, because we don't budget for that in the Fund 218. You have to combine Fund 218 and the department for the sheriff to see the total cost.
Somewhat, but I won't stretch out this meeting because of it. I just. Okay, well, it seems, is this,
20.
Okay.
Sheriff Department. And on page 29 is the supplemental law enforcement.
so number 5,600? That, I mean, it shows the same increase, right? It's pretty dramatic from this fiscal year to next fiscal year.
If you look on page 29 for Fund 218, this year we spent 186,000 out of that fund on sheriff, and we're projecting 100,000 here. We received 86,000 additional funding this year, but that's not a guaranteed funding. The 100,000 is guaranteed. So we budget, the total number is increasing only the 5.5% split between two different.
Okay. And then I'm assuming we track it. You guys track it very carefully, I'm sure.
Yes.
And does this allow, are we allowed on a yearly basis to ask them what they're doing for all that money?
Well, you can ask them on a daily basis if you want.
Well, I did. I mean, I suggested to them that they ought to get out of their car once a day and walk up and down the street. And I didn't see that met with wild enthusiasm, but I'm still hoping that would happen. Is that something we can even discuss? I mean, I discussed with them individually, but do we have an opportunity on a yearly basis to learn what is it you're doing for us, you know, for this money? That's, I mean, it's almost $1 million a year.
Annual contract that's brought forward to council for approval.
Yeah, I mean, because they can tell us how many calls they get for what situation, you know, for what category, on any report. They have all that stuff documented, if I recall.
Well, they recite it to us the first meeting of every month, right? We learn about the number of calls. I'm just kind of curious, at what time do we determine what the sheriff does versus what they determine that they should do? That's all.
I think if you wanted more foot patrol, though, when you have Kevin up here and you have him on the spot, council meeting, that's when you ask him or explain to him, see more foot patrol.
Okay, I did in a meeting with he and his lieutenant.
Yeah, I have too, and I have seen some of the officers out of their cars walking.
I have too, you know.
That's something you could also, when we actually go to review the contract, just like ask for a contract amendment that asks for a 30-minute foot patrol a day. I mean, honestly, if you really wanted to get it in a contract and see if it changes the cost or if they just put it in there, if they're just like, sure, handshake or whatever. I mean, we're going after the skate park contract and ignoring the fire contract for what we're getting. So, I mean, I like to call out Cal Fire for what they're given. So, if you want to try and get something, you got to ask during contract time and,
I intend to.
Since we're talking emergency services, can I bring up the 292 fund? 292. So that, everybody get to it if they want.
I have the email one, so I don't know what page to print out.
Sorry, that was on
Joel can, but when she find it on my, I have it.
290. I think I'll check here a little bit more. Did I pass it on the side? No, it was in here.
Yeah.
I just missed it.
I will print it out.
It was in here as part of it. Yeah, capital. Where did it go? I was just looking at it and then I switched over to yeah, I just had a line item. I was in here too as part of one of the funds, so that's all right. That's no big deal. And just look at the line item. I can figure out what page it was on. Where was it? I even put a pen mark on the page so I wouldn't lose it. Figures. That's the fire department expenditures.
If you just look at page 5, the summary, there's a line for
Yes,
Fund 292, the Fire Capital Fund.
okay.
Page 23 of the entire pack.
Perfect. All right. So this fund was set aside by the council a while ago for fire department expenditures. And namely building and equipment upgrades. So we have 50,000 to spend out of that for some mold abatement in the building. It sounds like we're gonna start that project this next fiscal year, maybe. Looking at that, okay, cool. That leaves what, 43,000-ish in that fund? So just wasn't sure if we wanted to keep holding on to that in the fund for future building mitigations or with the grant needing additional city funding, if we want to redirect those funds that are restricted right now to helping the city pay for that grant after we do the additional mitigation, and then just roll the original building or any other building and maintenance, because this will be pretty much the biggest thing that needs to happen to either one of the buildings that's left besides a roof for 36, just in the regular budget amendments for buildings and grounds. Since we're only maintaining them as really historic buildings, they're not really being used. After the $50,000 we've already encumbered for the repairs is taken out of the 292 fund, use the remainder to go toward support funding for the fire mitigation grant that we got. Is that an acceptable use if we all vote on it?
That funding was not restricted by
Okay.
any outside source.
Okay,
It was.
just internally
It
restricted.
was internally restricted. It was only internally restricted for 1 year from what I
Okay.
could tell in research, but we continued to do it. So I would say certainly that it could be used for that. You could even put it towards your fires. I mean, like I said, it was internally restricted and we've just maintained it in that fund,
Okay,
internally restricted by council.
right. Okay, so I'd like to make that proposal that we move that money around after the $50,000 for the needed mitigations to the building. If we put that money in another fund or redirect that money so that it can be used to help cover some of the fire mitigation grant costs.
So for my own knowledge, because you know way more about this than I do. So this particular fund maintains the buildings themselves, right? Is that what is that what that's designed for? Okay, so clerk.
No, this fund was developed, I don't know, years ago, Sean, or
Yeah.
maybe longer.
Probably
Even longer.
now, yeah.
Yeah.
15 years ago.
When, back in the day, when our volunteer group would go out on strike team, and we earned money into the city for that, for the use of our engine. And rather than putting that money towards the engine, we set it aside for future capital improvements. Fire.
Okay.
So, right below that, Sean, there's the Fire Construction Mitigation Fund, and that one is by ordinance, that's new development.
Yep.
That one is a little bit more restricted, so I don't think we have to do anything for this budget process, but I think that's a good idea. We take the 50,000 for the building out of that. I think it's a great idea to be able to come up with additional match on that new grant that we're.
Right. I'd like to see that covered so we're not having to take another hit. This was earned by volunteers and their hard work over 20 years plus to make sure that the city is protected. So I think it's a good use of it.
And because you and I had talked about this and I didn't realize it was the same fund we were discussing here, but you guys earned it. In my book, you get to pick what that money gets used for and you're the one that's left, so.
I should talk to Roger too then.
Yeah, so that would be my
I think
opinion.
you'd be
Any
okay
of
with it.
the volunteers that help earn that, I think should have a say in it personally,
Yeah.
as much as they can. Because it was there because of your guys's and your efforts, but
Yeah,
I think it's a great spot to put it in. because
That's what
what you
everybody
were
wanted to
planning
see.
for.
And yeah, if we weren't buying new equipment, gear, engines, stuff like that, then I think that the overall protection of the city is definitely the best way to spend that money. I
Absolutely.
think everybody would agree, or the majority of the previous membership would agree.
Yeah.
So we're good with that. We don't have to vote on it or anything. We can just move those funds since they're only internally restricted.
I think, like I said, I don't think we need to do anything for the budget process. I think we just need to know when that project comes forward.
No, we're good.
Even when we get to the mold, that we maybe move that down to the fire construction funds, but we'll re-review that, make sure that it can be used out of that fund.
Okay.
Because it is more restricted.
Right.
But definitely, I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
To use those funds. I don't like seeing funds just sit on the book
Yep.
year after year after year because they do lose their emphasis and history. I think that's a great use.
Yep. Great. Cool.
I agree with that 100%, and I like less restricted.
Just pension funds sitting on the books year after year. Do those get put in any money market? Do they make any return? Do they just sit there and collect dust?
Did you read our investment policy that we went, I'm being a little facetious. Yes, obviously we do. We invested the money and we track that and we report it quarterly, how all the money is invested.
It's worth the question.
We don't do anything risky.
Well, thanks.
Just having cash. is very-
Are we out of questions? Any other questions or comments?
I just want to thank our two individuals who came this afternoon to participate in our meeting. I appreciate it. very
Yes,
much.
it is
Thank
very
you.
good to get public input.
Yes,
We definitely enjoy it.
Thanks for putting it out.
absolutely.
I was just going to mention that we did this before the rates were approved. So it's in here at 3%, so we'll be making that change down to the 2% before we bring it back for council approval.
I just want to offer compliments to the package. It was really easy. Just the way it was put together, it all makes sense and it was easy to follow and yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
We couldn't do this without you guys, so thank you. All right, are we adjourned again?
Well, your motion to adjourn.
Motion.
So carried.
Thank you.
3:12. Thank you.
I just get asked out, just like, oh.